My husband thought he was rid of me. Thought. As if a few official papers and a fake car crash could erase a lifetime, a whole existence. The audacity. The sheer unadulterated gall of that man. Standing there blowing out candles surrounded by people who thought I was dead. And here I am, not a ghost, not a memory, but flesh and bone, breathing, and boiling with a rage that could melt steel. The very air in this ridiculously opulent ballroom crackled around me, thick with the scent of his expensive cologne and the cloying sweetness of his birthday cake. A saccharine lie to match his life. I walked straight for him, every single step a hammer blow against the silence that had fallen like a shroud the moment I appeared in the doorway. Heads snapped towards me. Forks clattered onto plates, and conversations died mid-sentence, leaving only the faint, tinkling echo of a dropped wine glass. He saw me then, his face draining of color faster than I could have imagined, the smile he had plastered on for his fawning guests twisting into a grotesque mask of pure terror. The sight of it, that fear in his eyes, was a bitter, satisfying feast after all this time. Arthur. My voice, when it finally broke through the stunned silence, was a raw, guttural sound, sharp as broken glass. It wasn't the voice he remembered, not the quiet, gentle murmur he'd ignored for years. This was the voice of a woman scorned, a woman resurrected, a voice that had been silenced for too long. He stumbled back, bumping into the lavishly decorated table behind him, nearly sending a towering champagne fountain crashing to the ground, a fitting metaphor for his crumbling world. His new fiancée, Serafina, a younger, seemingly innocent woman with wide, bewildered eyes, clutched his arm, her perfect blonde curls bouncing as she looked from me to him, searching for an explanation that he couldn't possibly provide. She looked utterly lost, genuinely confused by the apparition before her, and a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of pity stirred within me, quickly drowned by the volcanic anger still churning in my gut. She had no idea she was sleeping with a viper, a man who had declared his own wife dead to escape his responsibilities. What is this? Arthur finally stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak, barely audible over the growing murmurs of the crowd. He looked like a cornered animal, his eyes darting frantically around the room, searching for an escape, a hole to crawl into, anything to avoid the blazing fury in my gaze. His perfectly tailored suit, usually so pristine, suddenly looked like a costume on a desperate, failing actor, a disguise that was rapidly falling apart. I took another step closer, invading his personal space, forcing him to confront the nightmare he had created. "What is this, Arthur?" I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm, each word a venomous dart aimed directly at his treacherous heart. "This is your past, your truth finally catching up to you. This is the woman you buried alive, the woman you declared dead to the world, standing here breathing, and boiling with rage." The air seemed to crackle with the intensity of my words, carrying the weight of my suffering to every corner of the room. His face contorted, a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control. You're supposed to be." He couldn't even say the word, couldn't utter the lie in front of all these people. It was a pathetic, fumbling display, and a cruel laugh bubbled up from deep within me, a laugh that held no humor, only bitter victory. The sound of it seemed to shock the entire room into another deeper silence, a silence of shared horror and disbelief. "Supposed to be dead, Arthur? Is that what you were going to say?" I challenged, my voice rising, carrying over the gasps and whispers that were now spreading through the horrified onlookers. "Did you truly believe your little charade, your fabricated car crash, your expertly forged death certificate, would actually rid you of me? Did you honestly think I would just vanish into thin air, leaving you to enjoy your ill-gotten gains and your new shiny life?" My words were a whip, lashing out at his cowardice and his immense, cold-hearted betrayal. He finally snapped, his eyes flashing with a desperate, cornered animal's fury. "This is insane. You're insane. Get her out of here. Someone call security." His voice was loud, frantic, a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation, to drown out my accusations with sheer volume. He pointed a trembling finger at me, as if I were a hallucination, a figment of his guilty conscience rather than a living, breathing testament to his monumental betrayal. But no one moved. The security guard, standing rigidly by the doors, looked confused, unsure of how to handle a situation so utterly bizarre. The guests, frozen in their places, simply stared, their faces a mixture of shock, morbid curiosity, and dawning realization. The only person who seemed to break free from the collective paralysis was a man standing near Arthur. A man with a familiar, nervous twitch around his eyes, Marcus, Arthur's longtime business associate. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting from Arthur to me, his face pale and clammy. He took a small step back, trying to blend into the stunned crowd, but my eyes locked onto him. I saw it then, glinting subtly in his hand, a small metallic object, no bigger than his thumb. It was a micro-recorder. A cold, hard certainty settled in my stomach, replacing the fiery rage with something far more chilling. My voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper, audible only to Arthur and Marcus, who were now both sweating profusely under my intense scrutiny. "Oh, Arthur," I said, a cruel smile playing on my lips. "This isn't just about me. This is about everything. About all the lies you've told, all the lives you've destroyed. And you won't believe the company you've been keeping." I paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air, before looking directly at Marcus, whose eyes widened in terror. "And you, Marcus," I continued, my voice barely a whisper, but potent enough to make him flinch. "You're a part of this sordid little play too, aren't you? A very important part." I watched as the color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. He tried to hide the recorder, but it was too late. I had seen it. I knew. "He's not just a guest, Arthur. He's here to make sure I stay dead. But the joke's on both of you. Because I am here. And I'm ready to expose every single one of your dirty little secrets. You want to know how I, a woman declared dead, ended up crashing my husband's birthday party like a vengeful ghost? Well, settle in. It's a long story filled with whispers and lies, but it all makes sense now. Arthur, bless his charming, rotten heart, was never quite who he seemed. We had a long marriage, decades, the kind people envy. He was the charming one, the public face, always smooth-talking his way into deals and friendships. I was the quiet force behind him, the one who actually made things happen, handled the messy bits, and kept our home and our business running. I thought we were a team, a fortress. Foolish, wasn't I? He always had this way of getting what he wanted, a subtle kind of manipulation you barely noticed until it was too late. He'd butter you up, convince you something was for your own good, and then before you knew it, you were doing exactly what he wanted. He started taking over more and more of our shared money matters, saying it was to lessen my burden, or for smarter investments. I trusted him completely. He'd put papers in front of me, full of fancy legal words, and I'd sign them, never truly understanding the depth of what I was giving away. He spoke of building a new life for us, a grander future. And I, in my naive devotion, believed we were building it together. And then there was Serafina. She's caught in his web, a genuinely sweet, if a bit naive young woman. Arthur spun her a whole sad tale about his late wife. That's me, by the way, being ill, a tragic figure who suffered a long, painful decline. He painted himself as the devoted, grieving widower, forced to carry on bravely. She bought it hook, line, and sinker. It's sickening, really, how easily he can lie, how completely he can create a false reality and make people believe it. She seemed to genuinely love him, poor thing, drawn to his supposed stability and that polished charm of his. Marcus, his friend, was a different story. He always seemed so loyal, quiet, almost invisible in Arthur's shadow. I even felt a little sorry for him sometimes. But Marcus, it turns out, was deep in debt, a gambling problem he kept hidden. Arthur, ever the opportunist, found out. He didn't offer help. He offered a way out that involved betraying me. Marcus became Arthur's key player in all this, forging documents, giving false statements to the police, helping set up the fake car crash. He was promised a big cut from the sale of my inherited land, a valuable piece of property that was only in my name. The accident itself was planned down to the last detail. A remote road, a stolen car planted at the scene, a body, not mine of course, God knows whose, to be identified later. Arthur had connections. He always boasted about them, and they made sure the police report was quick, unquestioning. They just took his word for it. And I, the deceased, watched it all unfold from a distance, a ghost at my own funeral. Can you imagine the torment? Seeing people weep over an empty coffin, hearing them talk about me in the past tense, while I was very much alive, shattered, and utterly powerless. It was a hell I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I remember watching my own funeral from the shadows, hidden away, my heart aching with the pain I didn't know was possible. I saw my granddaughter Ilara, her face pale and tear-stained. She was always sharp, always had a quiet way of noticing things others missed. Even then, a tiny voice in my head wondered if she sensed something was wrong, if she could feel the earth shift under her feet. She was my light, my reason to fight, even when I felt like giving up. Those first few weeks, months even, were a blur of terror and despair. I lived in hiding, often in places I wouldn't wish on an animal, scrounging for food, constantly looking over my shoulder. The thought of being erased, of having my entire existence denied, was a profound horror. It wasn't just my life he took. It was my very identity, my future, my trust in humanity. He left me with nothing but the clothes on my back and the crushing weight of betrayal. That's what it feels like to be the underdog, to be completely helpless, to have to claw your way back from less than zero. But here's the thing about being dead. You learn to watch. You learn to listen. When you have nothing else to do, you observe. And I heard things, saw things, pieced together fragments of conversations no one thought the deceased would ever hear. I had a small old laptop I'd kept hidden, and with what little power I could scavenge, I began to piece together Arthur's digital footprint. He was sloppy, arrogant in his belief that I was gone for good. Like the phone call late at night from a burner phone where Arthur, his voice low and guttural, said, "She's gone. Finally. And now Marcus, about that little debt you owe me." It wasn't just about his freedom, it was about taking everything. That's when the rage truly began to solidify, turning from a dull ache into a burning inferno. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a force of nature coming back to reclaim what was mine. That phone call I overheard, the one where Arthur spoke to Marcus about his debt, wasn't just a tiny spark. It was the moment the whole picture started to explode in my mind. It wasn't just about Arthur wanting a new fancy life without me. No, this was a carefully planned plot, a cold-blooded scheme to grab something very specific, the inherited land, the old family estate that was only in my name. He couldn't get his hands on it if I was still alive, not without a messy public divorce that would cost him a fortune and ruin his precious image. He needed me legally dead to access that land. Marcus, that snake, wasn't just some helpless friend caught in Arthur's mess. He was a key player, a willing accomplice, desperate to dig himself out of a hole. I pieced it together little by little, the sickening truth. Marcus wasn't just doing Arthur a favor. He was the one who actually suggested the fake death plan to Arthur in the first place. He'd overheard me talking about the land's value, about the historical significance it held for my family, and his greedy little mind saw an opportunity. He manipulated Arthur's greed, fanning the flames of his desire for an easy out. They were both in it, hand in glove, their dark ambitions perfectly aligned. And then there was Beatrice, my distant cousin, sweet-faced Beatrice, who always seemed so concerned about my well-being, always asking detailed questions about my health, my routines. I thought she was just being caring, wanting to help Arthur cope with my perceived decline. Turns out she was passing all that information directly to Arthur, thinking she was doing him a good turn, probably hoping for some small reward down the line. It was a betrayal from within my own family, a stab in the back that twisted the knife even deeper. Every comforting word she'd offered me now echoed as a vile lie. As I hid, a ghost in my own life, I discovered Arthur was moving fast. Too fast. He already had a buyer lined up for my inherited land, a powerful, ruthless real estate developer. This wasn't just any developer. This was a man known for getting what he wanted. No questions asked, no ethics considered. He just wanted the property, and he didn't care how Arthur got it. This meant I had a ticking clock. If I didn't act soon, my family's legacy, generations of history rooted in that land, would be gone forever. It added a desperate urgency to my already boiling rage. Arthur's true nature, the icy indifference of the man, began to show itself in chilling detail. He didn't just fake my death. He celebrated it. He moved on with alarming speed, planning his new life with Serafina, never once showing a hint of remorse or grief. He was utterly devoid of empathy, seeing people as tools to be used and discarded, me chief among them. I managed to get access to his old computer, a risky move, but one that revealed so much. I read his emails, listened to snippets of his calls, and heard his cold calculations, his disdain for me, his absolute conviction that he had pulled off the perfect crime. The stakes, already sky high, went even higher. If I came forward, if I revealed myself, Arthur would stop at nothing to silence me. He had already proven he was capable of extreme measures. My life, which I had fought so hard to reclaim from the jaws of his deceit, was truly in danger now. He would see me as a direct threat to his freedom, his wealth, his carefully crafted new reality. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity anymore. I was fighting for my very survival. It was a race against time, not just for the land but for my breath. And then, just when I thought I had him figured out, just when I thought I understood the full depths of his depravity, I uncovered something else. Something far darker. As I listened to Arthur gloat about how easy it was, how no one suspected a thing, I heard a quiet click in the background of his call, followed by a voice I hadn't heard in years. A voice that belonged to a man long thought dead, a man named Silas. Silas, the same man who had helped Arthur bury a massive financial scandal years ago. A scandal that would have sent Arthur to prison if it had ever come to light. Silas's voice, raspy and low, sent a shiver down my spine. He was asking Arthur about a final payment. He pressed Arthur, saying, "No loose ends this time. Especially not her. Her." He meant me. This wasn't just about money or land anymore. This was about old secrets, dangerous connections, and a willingness to silence anyone who threatened to expose them. Arthur wasn't just a liar. He was a monster with powerful, shadowy allies who were willing to go to any length to keep their past buried. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They hadn't just wanted me out of the picture for the land. They wanted me gone because I knew too much about Arthur's past, secrets he'd carefully guarded, secrets that Silas was tied to. My death was a convenient solution. A way to clean up multiple messes at once. My blood ran cold. I wasn't just an inconvenience, I was a liability. And now the true battle wasn't just against Arthur, but against a network of lies and dangerous individuals he had carefully cultivated over the years. I knew then with a chilling certainty that this wasn't just about reclaiming my life. It was about exposing a monster, a network of monsters who operated in the shadows. Because as I listened to Arthur gloat about how easy it was, how no one suspected a thing, I knew the full horrifying truth was about to explode. And when it did, it wouldn't just be Arthur's life that shattered. It would be a domino effect, taking down everyone connected to his vile web. I just had to make sure I was alive to see it. You think knowing the truth sets you free? Not always. Sometimes it just traps you in a deeper, colder kind of hell. After I figured out the full extent of Arthur's twisted plan, including Silas and the older scandals, I hit my lowest point. Imagine living in the shadows, constantly hungry, constantly cold, watching the man who erased you flaunt his new life, throwing lavish parties, while you're picking through trash for scraps. That was my reality. The fear of being discovered was a constant companion, a tightening knot in my stomach. Every siren, every sudden noise, sent a jolt of terror through me. I was a ghost in my own life, and the loneliness was a silent scream. There were nights I just lay on cold, damp floors, shivering, questioning if it was even worth it, if I had any strength left. I remember one night, huddled in an abandoned warehouse, the wind howling through broken windows, I just broke down. I cried until my throat was raw, until there were no more tears left. It was a deep primal wail of grief for everything I had lost. My home, my identity, my friends, my future. The pain was so intense, I genuinely thought my heart would stop. I thought, this is it. I can't do this anymore. He won. But then something shifted. In the depths of that breakdown, a tiny burning ember of defiance flickered to life. I wasn't just a victim. I was a survivor. This wasn't just about getting my old life back. It was about fighting for something bigger. It was about proving that evil doesn't always win, that lies eventually crumble. My tears dried, replaced by a steely resolve. The grief transformed into a burning, white-hot anger that gave me strength. It was like a switch flipped. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing for war. I looked back at my own actions too. And yes, there were regrets. I had been too trusting, too willing to let Arthur handle everything, especially our money. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who deferred to him, believing he knew best. I kicked myself for not paying closer attention to the legal papers he put in front of me, for not questioning his sudden insistence on managing all our investments. My own complacency, my blind faith, had left me vulnerable. It was a hard truth to swallow, but I faced it. My past mistakes, my blind spots, had directly led me to this dark, desperate place. Just as this new resolve began to take root, fate, or perhaps just cruel timing, dealt me another crushing blow. I managed to get access to a public library computer, a miracle in itself, and saw a news report flashing across the screen. The headline screamed, "Historic estate changes hands. Arthur Sinclair finalizes deal on coveted Willow Creek property." Willow Creek. My land. My family's legacy. It was gone. The pictures showed Arthur smiling, shaking hands with that ruthless developer, the one who asked no questions. My heart sank, a heavy stone dropping into an empty well. It felt like the final nail in my coffin. The land, the last tangible piece of my past I had a chance to save, was no longer mine. It was truly an all-is-lost moment. What was left to fight for? The air left my lungs. I slumped in the chair, staring at the screen, tears pricking at my eyes again. But this time they didn't fall. I felt hollow, utterly defeated. He had won. He had taken everything. My life, my identity, my home, my family's land. He had truly erased me. There was nothing left. The hope, that tiny flicker, threatened to go out for good. The sheer emptiness of it all was suffocating. But then, as I stared at his smug, victorious face on that screen, I noticed something small. A tiny detail. On his lapel, shining brightly, was a pin. A silver crest. I recognized it instantly. It was the symbol of the very old, very exclusive society he had joined years ago. A society I had been a nominal member of through marriage, though I'd never cared for their pomp and circumstance. He always prided himself on his standing within that group. A memory sparked. A forgotten conversation from years ago, a hushed mention of their strict rules, their code of conduct. I remembered Arthur himself once complaining about their harsh penalties for dishonorable conduct among members. A tiny, desperate seed of an idea began to sprout in the barren landscape of my despair. This society, with all its dusty rules and high-minded ideals, might just be his undoing. It was a crazy idea, a long shot. But what did I have to lose? I also remembered Alara, my granddaughter. Even during my death, she kept sending messages to my old social media accounts, little notes, hoping for a sign. "Grandma, I miss you. I found your old diary. Did you really give Uncle Arthur all those papers?" Clues. She had been leaving me clues, small breadcrumbs of her suspicion, hoping I was still out there, hoping for a sign that I was alive. She was relentless in her quiet search for truth. My love for her, the thought of her growing up in a world where such evil went unpunished, fueled me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That pin, those whispered rules, Alara's unwavering belief in me. They were my last desperate gamble. I took a deep, shaky breath, the anger returning hot and strong, pushing away the despair. If Arthur wanted to play games, then I, the dead woman, would play the final hand. Because if I didn't, not only would he get away with faking my death and stealing my legacy, but he would also get away with something far worse, something that only I, the dead woman, knew the full, horrifying truth about. And that truth was about to explode. That little silver pin on Arthur's lapel. It was more than just a piece of fancy jewelry. It was the key. He belonged to a very old, very secret society. I had known about it, of course, because by marriage I was technically a member too, though I never really cared for their stuffy dinners or their elaborate rules. But now, those very rules were about to become his biggest problem. This society, you see, had a ridiculously strict code. Absolute honesty among its members, especially when it came to money or, faking a spouse's death. And the penalty for breaking that rule? Not just getting kicked out, but public shame and losing all your money and power within their influential circle. That was Arthur's real weakness, his desperate need to be seen as important, respected. His reputation was everything to him. And here's where the story takes a sharp turn, a real gut punch. I didn't just stumble upon this hidden rule. While I was dead to the world, a quiet, brilliant woman named Mrs. Albright found me. She was an old, eccentric mentor figure from that very society, someone I'd always admired from afar. She had always been suspicious of Arthur, had seen through his charm. She sent me coded messages, subtle clues hidden in old books and forgotten archives, guiding me towards the society's dusty bylaws, hinting at the cracks in Arthur's perfect plan. It was like she was playing chess and I was her queen making moves she couldn't make herself. Suddenly, I wasn't just a helpless victim anymore. I was a player in a much bigger game. But the twists kept coming. Mrs. Albright wasn't just a mentor. She was also Marcus's godmother. Yes, the same Marcus who helped Arthur fake my death. Mrs. Albright was completely horrified and ashamed of his involvement, seeing it as a stain on her family's name. She felt a deep responsibility to help me expose both Marcus and Arthur. This connection gave me so much insight. She knew Marcus's weaknesses, his gambling problem, his desperate fear of Arthur. She gave me inside information, little tidbits about his movements, his secret meetings. It was like getting a cheat sheet to the enemy's playbook. And then there was Alara, my sharp, intuitive granddaughter. Turns out, she had been digging into my death too, long before Mrs. Albright and I connected. She had noticed all the tiny things that didn't add up, the inconsistencies in Arthur's stories, the way he avoided talking about me. Alara, with her incredible tech skills, had already uncovered some digital footprints Arthur and Marcus had carelessly left behind, old emails, strange bank transfers, deleted files she managed to recover. Her search for the truth, for me, had led her to Mrs. Albright, unknowingly becoming part of our growing alliance. We were a team. The dead grandmother, the wise mentor, and the tech-savvy granddaughter. It was a bizarre, brilliant trio, all united by a burning desire for justice. The dramatic tension was building like a storm. My plan was risky, but it was the only way. I wouldn't just expose Arthur legally. I would expose him where it hurt him most, within the society he so desperately wanted to impress. I needed solid proof of his fraud against me and, more importantly, his betrayal of the society's sacred code. We had to prove Marcus was a willing accomplice, but with a twist. I wanted to use Marcus's own guilt and fear against him. He was the weaker link, easily terrified by the thought of prison, and he was more likely to crack under pressure than Arthur. The clock was ticking. We had a deadline. The society's annual gathering. Arthur, ever the showman, planned to make a grand announcement about his new life, his new fiancée, and the legacy he was building, all built on my supposed grave. He wanted to parade his victory, but I would be there. We had to gather every piece of evidence, every forged document, every incriminating recording before that night. The tension was almost unbearable. Every hour felt like a lifetime. But the most shocking discovery, the one that made my blood run cold, wasn't about Arthur or Marcus. It was about Serafina. My sweet, seemingly naive Serafina. Just as I thought I had all the pieces of the puzzle, a coded message arrived from Mrs. Albright. A single line that turned my world upside down again. It was chilling in its simplicity. Serafina isn't the innocent lamb you think she is, dear. She's been playing a much longer game than any of us imagined. And she has the one piece of evidence that could truly destroy Arthur, and perhaps all of us. The truth, it seemed, was far more tangled than I could have ever imagined. With the full, tangled web of lies finally visible, thanks to Mrs. Albright's wisdom and Alara's sharp mind, it was time to stop hiding and start fighting. The game had truly begun. We couldn't just drop all the bombshells at once. We had to be strategic, plant seeds of doubt, and watch Arthur's carefully built world begin to crack. And oh, how it cracked. We started with whispers. Small, seemingly harmless questions placed in the right ears within the society. Mrs. Albright, with her years of influence, subtly questioned Arthur's sudden remarriage, the lack of a proper mourning period, the vague details surrounding my accident. Just enough to make the elders raise an eyebrow, to make them wonder if their golden boy wasn't quite so golden after all. Meanwhile, Alara, a ghost in the digital world, started leaking small, anonymous bits of Arthur's financial records. Just enough to show odd transfers, strange dates, transactions that didn't quite add up to a grieving widower's accounts. Each tiny leak was a drop of poison, slowly seeping into Arthur's perfect image. And Marcus? He was already a mess. The pressure was getting to him big time. His gambling debts were spiraling, and the paranoia was eating him alive. He started to believe Arthur was going to betray him, throw him under the bus to save himself. He called Mrs. Albright in a panic, desperate, begging for her help. That's when I saw my chance. Through Mrs. Albright, I spoke to him, keeping my voice low and steady, calm even as my blood was boiling. I didn't threaten him. I offered him a way out, a chance for a lighter sentence if he told the truth. He was terrified, a broken man, and he finally spilled everything. Every dirty detail about the fake death, the falsified documents, the original plan to ensure I stayed gone for good. He even admitted to a few more of Arthur's dark secrets. I wasn't just observing anymore, I was acting. Every piece of evidence Marcus gave us, every document Alara uncovered, I pored over it, learning every single detail. I studied the society's bylaws like a textbook, memorizing every rule, every penalty. My voice, which had been reduced to shaky whispers in the dark, grew stronger, clearer. I practiced what I would say, how I would confront him, every word chosen for maximum impact. It was empowering, the feeling of regaining control, of turning my victimhood into a weapon. The fear was still there, but now it was overshadowed by a fierce, burning resolve. Arthur, on his end, began to unravel. He felt the subtle shift, the eyes on him, the whispers. He became agitated, snapping at his associates, his carefully cultivated charm slipping. He tried to silence the rumors, which only made them spread faster, like wildfire. He grew suspicious of everyone, even Serafina, who looked increasingly worried and confused by his erratic behavior. He pushed Marcus away, isolating him further, which, ironically, pushed Marcus right into our hands. Arthur was so consumed by his own arrogance, he didn't see the trap closing around him. The confrontations began, not face-to-face yet, but through a series of calculated moves. Alara, using a fake identity, sent an anonymous package to a prominent society elder, filled with printouts of Arthur's strange financial transactions and Marcus's desperate, coded emails. Mrs. Albright, at a small private luncheon, subtly brought up questions about the speed of Arthur's remarriage, mentioning how unusual it was for a man supposedly so deeply grieving. Each little prod chipped away at his perfect facade, making him squirm, making him look less like a pillar of society and more like a cornered rat. The ultimate confrontation, the big showdown, was set for the society's annual gala. Arthur's birthday celebration was just a warm-up. This gala was where he planned to make a grand announcement about his new life, his new beginnings, his secure future with Serafina. He wanted to solidify his position, to prove he was still the man in charge. But I knew better. Mrs. Albright, Alara, and I worked tirelessly, sleepless nights spent gathering every last shred of proof. Forged documents, detailed records of money transfers, Marcus's terrified confessions recorded by Mrs. Albright, and the final devastating piece of evidence that Serafina unwittingly held. The tension was a living thing buzzing around us. The date of the gala loomed, a giant, inevitable storm on the horizon. I felt a thrilling mix of fear and sheer, exhilarating anticipation. This was it. Everything hinged on that night. Arthur would be basking in the glow of his supposed triumph, completely oblivious to the tsunami about to hit him. I stared at the invitation, a glossy, embossed card with Arthur's smiling face on the cover, a picture of false triumph. He had no idea what was coming, but the true game-changer, the final nail in his perfectly manicured coffin, wasn't just my appearance. It was the whisper from Marcus, trembling on the phone to Mrs. Albright, before he abruptly hung up, terrified someone might overhear. She has a child, Arthur. A secret child. And if the society finds out about that, it's all over. My heart hammered. A secret child. That was a bombshell even I hadn't expected. This was going to be an earthquake. The night of the gala arrived like a storm front, crackling with unspoken tension. The grand ballroom shimmered with crystal and silk, packed with the elite of the society, all dressed in their finest, unaware that the air itself was about to ignite. Arthur, in a crisp tuxedo, was a picture of false confidence, his arm linked with a radiant, though slightly nervous Serafina. He moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, absolutely basking in the glow of his supposed triumph, completely oblivious to the tsunami about to hit him. I waited, hidden in a side room, my heart hammering against my ribs, a mixture of fear and adrenaline coursing through my veins. Mrs. Albright was by my side, her eyes sharp and knowing, a calm anchor in the rising storm. Alara, discreetly positioned among the guests, was ready, her phone clutched tight, ready to capture every moment. This wasn't just about making an entrance. It was about delivering the final devastating blow. The moment came. Arthur, champagne glass in hand, tapped for silence, his voice booming with false authority as he began his speech, thanking everyone for their support, speaking of new beginnings and his tragic loss, referring to me, of course. That was my cue. I stepped into the grand archway, my eyes fixed on him, every single breath a silent roar. The gasp that swept through the room was almost a physical thing, a collective intake of breath as the dead woman appeared. Arthur froze, his face losing all color, the champagne glass wobbling in his hand. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, and in a way he had. The ghost of his conscience, the ghost of his lies, standing right in front of him. Arthur! My voice cut through the stunned silence, clear and strong, no longer shaking, filled with the fury of 1,000 injustices. The only tragedy here, Arthur, is the elaborate lie you've built your entire life on. Chaos erupted. People murmured, gasped, pointed. Serafina let out a small cry, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief. Arthur tried to bluster, to deny, to shout for security, but his words were hollow, pathetic. This is insane. She's unstable, he stammered, his voice cracking, but no one was listening. All eyes were on me. I walked towards him, every step deliberate, every single person in that room shrinking under the weight of my accusation. Unstable, Arthur? Or simply inconveniently alive? I stopped just a few feet from him, forcing him to meet my gaze. You faked my death. You stole my life, my identity, my family's legacy, all to escape your debts and build this pathetic charade. My voice was a whip, lashing out at his crumbling composure. Then Marcus, pale and trembling, stepped forward from the crowd, guided by a subtle nod from Mrs. Albright. He clutched his hands, his voice barely a whisper, but amplified by the stunned silence. He made me do it, Marcus cried, his words a desperate plea. He blackmailed me. He planned everything, the car, the fake body, the papers. I have the recordings. I have the emails. He held up his micro-recorder, a tiny device that held enough truth to shatter Arthur's world. The society elders, alerted by Mrs. Albright's prior subtle clues, moved forward, their faces grim. They looked from Marcus to Arthur, then to me, their expressions hardening. One of them, a stern-faced woman named Eleanor, spoke. Arthur Sinclair, is this true? Have you indeed violated every sacred oath of this society? Her voice was cold, unforgiving. Arthur tried one last desperate attempt to turn the tables. He's lying. They're conspiring against me. This woman is deranged. He pointed at me, then at Marcus. But it was too late. The dam had broken. And then the ultimate blow. Serafina, who had been listening with tears streaming down her face, her body trembling, stepped away from Arthur. She held up a photograph, a small worn picture, her hand shaking violently. It showed Arthur much younger, with a beautiful dark-haired woman and a small child. The secret child. He lied about everything. Serafina sobbed, her voice raw with heartbreak. He has a secret family. This is his son. He hid him for years. He lied about his past, his entire life. She then pulled out a stack of documents from her clutch bag. I found these in a hidden compartment in his study. More fraud. More lies. Arthur buckled, his knees giving out, his face a mask of utter horror. The carefully constructed facade, the years of lies, the charming persona, all crumbled in an instant. He was no longer the powerful, arrogant man. He was a pathetic, broken shell. The role reversal was complete. I, the dead woman, stood tall and strong, while he, the mighty Arthur, lay exposed and defeated. The society elders, seeing the overwhelming evidence and hearing Serafina's raw confession, wasted no time. Eleanor, the stern elder, raised her hand. Arthur Sinclair, by the unanimous decision of this council, you are hereby stripped of your membership. You have brought nothing but disgrace and dishonor upon our esteemed organization. Your actions are unforgivable. Legal figures among the guests, now fully aware of the extent of his crimes, stepped forward, their faces grim, promising immediate investigations into fraud and embezzlement. Marcus, seeing his last chance, agreed to cooperate fully with the authorities, his voice trembling but clear. Arthur was dragged away, his face contorted in a mask of pure fury and disbelief. He struggled, cursed, but his power was gone. His world built on sand had finally washed away. And in that moment, for the briefest second as he was led past me, his eyes locked with mine. The anger in his eyes flickered, replaced by something else: recognition. A primal, chilling understanding that he had underestimated me, the dead wife. He muttered 2 words, just loud enough for me to hear over the murmurs of the crowd, words that sent a shiver down my spine, even after everything. "You always did come back." He was right. And I had. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But for me it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. Reclamation of my name, my life, my dignity. Arthur thought he could erase me, that I was just a problem to be solved, a loose end to be tied up and buried. But you cannot truly erase someone. You cannot bury truth forever. It will always find a way to surface, to breathe, to demand its rightful place in the light, no matter how deep the lies are piled. Arthur's life, once so glittering and perfect, crumbled into dust. He faced massive legal problems, not just for faking my death, but for all the fraud and embezzlement Serafina's evidence exposed. He ended up in jail, stripped of every penny, every fancy car, every shred of his so-called reputation. He's living a life of disgrace and isolation now, a far cry from the opulent parties he once threw. The inherited land, my family's legacy, was returned to me. A painful but precious reminder of what I almost lost. His greed consumed him, left him with nothing but the bitter taste of his own downfall. And Marcus? Well, he got a reduced sentence for cooperating, for finally telling the truth. It's not an easy path for him, but he's trying to rebuild his life, truly trying to pay off his debts and clean up his act. He even sent me a heartfelt apology, a long rambling letter filled with regret. It takes courage to admit your wrongs, and I saw a glimmer of hope for him, a chance at true redemption. Sometimes, even the people who betray you can find their way back, if they're willing to face their demons. Serafina, bless her heart, was utterly heartbroken, of course, but her pain turned into strength. She didn't let Arthur's betrayal break her. Instead, she became a fierce advocate for victims of fraud and deception, using her own painful experience to help others. She speaks at conferences, sharing her story, warning people about the dangers of blindly trusting charming lies. She's found a genuine purpose, and I believe she'll find true happiness, far away from Arthur's toxic shadow. She proved that even a victim can find their own powerful voice. Alara, my bright, amazing granddaughter, found her calling. Our bond, forged in the fires of this chaos, is stronger than ever. She now uses her incredible tech skills for good, pursuing a career in digital forensics, helping uncover truths and bring justice to others. She's a fierce advocate for justice, a testament to the fact that even the youngest among us can make a profound difference. She reminds me every day that the future is bright, filled with people who value truth and integrity. As for me, I reclaimed my identity, my assets, and my peace. I moved back into my home, the one Arthur thought he'd stolen forever. I'm slowly, carefully rebuilding my life, cherishing the quiet moments, the simple joys. I'm no longer defined by my past as a victim, but as a survivor, a champion of truth. I find profound contentment in the simple things: a cup of tea on my porch, a quiet conversation with Mrs. Albright, and laughter with Alara. The scar is there, a permanent reminder, but it's a scar of strength, not of weakness. My journey, my forced return from the dead, shows that survival isn't just about breathing. It's about refusing to be erased, about fighting for your dignity even when everyone else has written you off. It's about finding the inner strength to claw your way back from nothing, to face the darkness and demand your rightful place in the light. True dignity isn't given. It's earned, often through incredible hardship and the willingness to fight for what's right. Lies, no matter how elaborate or how carefully constructed, always crumble in the end. The truth always finds a way. So if you ever feel like you're being erased, like your voice is silenced, or your truth is buried beneath a pile of lies, remember my story. Remember that even when all seems lost, when you're facing your darkest moment, there is a flicker of hope, a spark of defiance, deep within you. And that spark, if nurtured, can ignite a fire that burns away the darkness, exposes the lies, and brings forth the truth. Don't let anyone write your ending for you, because your story, your truth, is yours to tell. And sometimes the most powerful comeback is simply showing up, breathing, and boiling with the undeniable force of your own existence. What part of this journey resonates with you the most, or what questions does it leave you with?